If you are new here, we just want to say a special welcome to you. Welcome to Trinity Church. We would love to meet you. We have a table in the back. Some welcome team people would love to tell you how you can get more connected here in community at our church, because we are about that. We don't want to be just an event that people show up to, but a community on mission together, growing together, walking together, under the leadership of our Good Shepherd Jesus. This morning in the Gospel of Mark, we're walking through the Gospel of Mark, looking at the real Jesus, the people who knew him. What did they give us? What did God give us through them to know about him? And this morning we have a very famous story. It's the only miracle in all four Gospels. The only one. So of extreme importance, so pay attention. I'm going to read it to you. And it follows the theme of provision. Provision. That Jesus is our provider, both physically and spiritually. So let me read it to you. It's Mark chapter 6, verse 30 through 44. It is the story of Jesus feeding the 5,000 with the few pieces of bread and fish. Verse 30 of chapter 6. The apostles returned to Jesus and told him all that they had done and taught. And he said to them, "Come away by yourselves to a desolate place and rest a while." For many were coming and going, and they had no leisure even to eat. And they went away in the boat to a desolate place by themselves. Now many saw them going and recognized them, and they ran there on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of them. When he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion on them, because they were like sheep without a shepherd. And he began to teach them many things. And when it grew late, his disciples came to him and said, "This is a desolate place, and the hour is now late. Send them away to go into the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat." But he answered them, "You give them something to eat." And they said to him, "Shall we go and buy 200 denarii worth of bread and give it to them to eat?" And he said to them, "How many loaves do you have? Go and see." And when they had found out, they said, 5 and 2 fish. Then he commanded them all to sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups by hundreds and by 50s. And taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and said a blessing, and broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples to set before the people. And he divided the 2 fish among them all. And they all ate and were satisfied. And they took up 12 baskets full of broken pieces and of the fish. And those who ate the loaves were 5,000 men. This is the word of the Lord. Now, when you hear that story and you hear the word provision, provide, being provided for by God, some people may hear that and think, yes, I struggle with believing that God is going to provide. That is a real struggle for some people, to believe like God's going to provide for my tangible needs, my spiritual needs, that he is actually going to provide what I need. You may be a person that struggles with fear of the future, like what's going to happen to me in the future? Is God going to provide for me? Others of you may hear that and you may think, bro, we live in America. Like, who's really going to struggle with being provided for here? Like, even the poorest of the poor are still richer than some of the richest in other third world countries. Like, is this really a need that we have here in Austin, Texas, being provided for? Guys, this is important. This is crucial. Because what Jesus is getting at in his life and his ministry and in this story is that physical provision matters. Spiritual provision also matters. And the things that we can get off on is mixing the two up. When we take our desire for God, our spiritual desires, our spiritual hunger, and we go try to fill that with physical things, we get them mixed up, man, we can get ourselves in a whole lot of trouble. Provision is, I think, a fascinating theme in our time. There's even a phrase that we have called job satisfaction. Job satisfaction. That I could have a job that pays me money, that provides, food on the table and shelter over my head, but that job itself needs to satisfy me. Like, I need to find a job that satisfies my soul. Now, is it bad to find meaning in work? No, we should pursue meaning in work and do something important with our lives. But if you were to talk to, this is a new thing, if you were to talk to either of my grandparents, or all four of them, and use the phrase job satisfaction, okay? They grew up as kids in the Great Depression. They would be like, what are you talking about? Like, work is not supposed to be satisfying. It's supposed to be hard. It provides the thing that satisfies you, which is food on the table. This is a new thing. Even Charles Taylor, the theologian, said, industrial age leaders didn't realize that in a secular age, work would have to do the weight-bearing work that religion used to do, providing us with our sense of self-actualization, identity, and worth. See, with the whole category of provision, when you try to remove God from our culture, well, guess what? We got to go somewhere for our ultimate sense of filling that spiritual hunger, finding significance in life. And in our culture, man, one of the things that it drives us to is find satisfaction, soul satisfaction in what you produce, what you create, the job that you do. And when we look to physical things to do what only God can do, we will be left wanting. We will be left without a shepherd, without the real food that we need for our soul. Jesus came, and he came. He said something very clear. He said, I am the bread of life. I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. I am the bread of life. Or as C.S. Lewis explained in his chapter on hope in Mere Christianity, he said, there's three ways to deal with this deep hunger in our souls, this desire for something to fulfill us. You can either, one, go the cynical route and shut it down and just believe nothing ever is going to satisfy me. I'm not going to expect it. I'm just going to shut my heart down and become hardened. Route two would be, he said, the most reckless way. And it'd be the way of the hedonist, which is, I'm going to just keep going from thing to thing. Like, I'm going to go from one thing to the next, one job to the next, one person to the next, one relationship to the next, one indulgence to the next. I'm just going to keep looking, right? And that's the person who does the most harm to those around them. And then he said the Christian way. The Christian way is this. It's to understand that if there are desires for something, then there is an object of that desire. So ducks, when they're born, have a desire. He says ducks have a desire to swim because there is such a thing as water. People have a desire for sex because there is such a thing as sex. And then he says, if I find in myself a desire which nothing on this earth can ever satisfy, that must mean I am meant for a different world. And what he's getting at is we're meant for Jesus, someone from another world, someone from heaven, the bread that has come to satisfy our soul. Okay, so this story, this miracle gets at all these themes, that Jesus is the ultimate bread of heaven. Once again, this is the only miracle in all four Gospels. So the disciples, the apostles, they must have known this is crucial. Everybody needs to hear this. And there's a misconception here. You could read this and think to yourself, oh, this is nice. This is kind of friendly Jesus providing a good picnic for those around him. You could picture, red checkered, blankets on the floor, or Zilker Park, and everybody's having a nice meal and stuff. And yes, that did happen. Everybody had a nice meal. But when the disciples wrote this story, they're intentionally triggering manna memory. Manna memory. If you've never heard the word manna before, this is a story, a specific story in the Old Testament. All kinds of allusions and references. One, to Jesus being our good shepherd, but also the story of when God led his people into the wilderness from Egypt. He rescued them from slavery. He's leading them to the promised land. In between the slavery story, Exodus, and the promised land is this story of wandering in the desert. Now, a whole bunch of people, hundreds of thousands of people wandering in a desert, you're going to run into what? A food problem. Okay, so they had a real food problem, but God took them there to deliberately show them, I am your provider, and even in an impossible situation, I'm going to provide food for you. So every morning, he began providing this thing that would show up on the ground after the dew set in the morning, and they picked it up, and it's called manna. In Hebrew means, what is it? It was something they had never seen before, some kind of bread substance that had all the nutrients they needed. He would only provide enough for one day. Each day. That's where we get the phrase, give us this day our daily bread. He would give them what they need that day. If they tried to hoard it and save it, it would get rotten and spoiled. He would provide double amount on Saturday because they needed to rest on Sunday. So this story is every day dependent, and they got ingrained in their mind, God is our provider. And even when we're in a desert, a desolate place, even when we're in crisis and when we're suffering, when we're hurting, he's going to provide what we need. And so in this story, we see the meal, we see Jesus and Mark doing things to show us Jesus is that same God. And he's providing in even a new and a bigger way. Mark repeatedly uses the phrase desolate, deserted place 3 different times. This is a reference to that Old Testament story. There's a direct echo of the wilderness when Israel wandered in the desert. They depended daily. Jesus also provides the food miraculously, so it's a miraculous provision. There's a lot of details in the Old Testament story of Moses organizing people into groups of 50s and 100s. You have that same dynamic happening in this story. Mark is making it, that's another reference to the Old Testament journey through the wilderness. Moses was seen as a shepherd. In this, you see Jesus looking at the people with compassion and saying they are like sheep without a shepherd. The manna was more than they needed to satisfy them. The bread and the fish here is more than they needed to satisfy them. The disciples had 12 baskets of food, like extras, left over, 12 tribes of Israel. You basically can't find a commentary in any denomination, in any group, that doesn't make this conclusion, that this is a direct reference to the manna story. So when we think about that manna story, when we think of that dynamic, Mark is saying, think about Jesus. That Jesus was there, a part of that miracle, and now he's here to do something bigger and even better. Because there's a fascinating detail with this use of the word compassion in reference to them being a sheep without a shepherd in verse 34. We get a window into Jesus' heart. Now, I don't know about you, but if you've ever in a relationship with anybody, there's these moments that you have where someone might open up their heart to you and share what they're feeling on the inside. Share, this is the deepest feeling in my heart for you, right? That's an important moment in any relationship, to get past surface level conversation and open up the heart and share, this is how I feel about you. This right here, man, we get a window into Jesus, the Lord of the universe, his heart for his people. And the word that Mark uses, and because it's the word that Jesus experienced, is the word compassion. Compassion. Now, when we hear that word, you may think of like gentle, soft. Oh, he felt gentle, he felt soft. That doesn't do it justice. The Greek here of compassion it's this visceral, gut level care. Visceral, gut level care. Now, I don't know if you've ever, part of it, I feel like I didn't really experience this until I was a parent, but I think there were moments before I was a parent where I experienced before in different ways, maybe a kid in a youth group, you just feel for them, or a girl you fall in love with that you want to marry, you feel this gut level care for them, that feeling that you may have felt at some point. Just please hear this. If you don't hear any of this more, hear this. Jesus has that for his people. The context, though, is fascinating because it was first used, this phrase was first used by Moses in Numbers 27:17. It's Moses, he's coming to retirement, or not retirement, but he's coming to the end of his mission, and he's realizing, I got to pass this on to somebody else, right? And so he looks at the people, and he says this prayer for God to provide a leader for the people after him, because they are like sheep which have no shepherd. But the leader that Moses is thinking of ends up being who? Joshua. And what is Joshua? Joshua is a warrior. He put swords in the hands of the people because the need at the time was protection. They needed to protect themselves from the wildly evil nations around them. Think terrorist nations times 10. They needed a warrior leader to protect them and to lead them in to safety. They needed conquest, rightfully so. I mean, if you see it, it makes sense. Here, though, it's like Jesus is doing something new, something different. Instead of putting swords in the hands of the people out in this area, which some commentators will suggest, this crowd was wanting a warrior king. Even at the end of the John part of this story, they rush to take him and seize him and make him king, but he's like, no, I'm not that kind of king, and he sneaks away. He's not there to put swords in their hands. He's there to give them a word. He preaches to them all day. He preaches the word to them, and he gives them bread. And he shows them, I have compassion on you. I care about you. I'm wanting relationship with you. I saw this video interview recently, and it was this group doing these street interviews on the street, and they were asking people this one pointed question. I don't know who these people were. I just saw it, and I saw the responses, and it was, would you rather have a meal with Jesus or $500,000? Would you rather have a meal with Jesus and be able to talk to him, or $500,000? And they only showed the people who said Jesus, and it was a lot of people. And it wasn't all Christians. It was like random people. One guy, I think, was Jewish. He had a Star of David, necklace on. Like these different people were saying, I think a meal with Jesus. I could learn something from him. I could ask him questions or whatever. I could find out, was he really who he said he was? All these different responses. I'll be honest with you. When I saw this video, I turned it off and I just thought, I want to contemplate on this. It struck me, and I sat there in my chair, and I just thought, a meal with Jesus. And my first emotion, to be honest with you, was fear. It was like, I had this shot of anxiety in my heart, like, oh man, if I were to actually sit down with Jesus right now, how would that go? Kind of fear, what would he say to me? Would he be pleased with me? Would he call me out on some things? And I got kind of scared. And then I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute. Should I be feeling this? I'm a pastor. I shouldn't be feeling anxiety over meeting with Jesus. And, having this passage on my mind, I just was struck with this word, compassion. Gut, visceral care for me. And then I thought, oh no, yeah, I need that meeting with Jesus. Because even if he has some hard things to say to me, even if there's some things that he would call me out, he would call all of us out on some things, but he would do it in a way that I think I would know, based on this passage. Gut level compassion and care. In our small group, one of the questions in the small group guide was, who are leaders that you respected in the past? And I think all the ones that people shared, it was obvious they believed the person cared about them. Even if you've had a parent, a coach, a leader, an authority, a boss, those people that you look back on and think, I respect them. They might have even still been a hard person to be around, but if they have this character quality of, you're convinced they care about you. You're convinced, no, they want my good. They were kind of hard, and they pushed me, and they challenged me. But it was because they cared about my development. Jesus, more than anyone in the universe, has a deep compassion and care for you. And even if it's scary to come with him with all of you are, all of who you are, all of your sin, all of your stuff, he's the only one who can truly get in there and help you like nobody else. I remember there's another time in my life where I was thinking about meals, a big meal, big fish and bread meal. I was thinking, what was the big meal that I had? And I was remembering this one meal in college where a friend of mine's dad, I'm not endorsing gambling at all, but this is just a true story I'm telling you. Okay, my friend's dad had gambled a lot at a casino in Shreveport. And he had an enormous amount of something called comps. I don't really know what comps are. All I know now is it provides free food for those who use them. And so he had a lot of comps, and he had so many, he couldn't spend them all. My friend said to me, let's go to Shreveport to the casino, and we can get free meals and free stuff and everything. And so we went, and there was a bunch of guys. We went, we sat down, we were like, let's go to the finest, steak restaurant. And at the time, looking back, I don't know if I would go there now, but at the time, college students, like food, like, steak, here we go. And so we're in this steak diner deal, and my friend says, literally, we can't order enough food. And so just order literally whatever you want. And so we ordered, the waiter comes out, and we're like, we'll take every appetizer on the menu. I as a college student just thinking, this is so boss, like this is amazing, and he's like, okay, yeah, And so he lays out all that. Well, everybody here wants 2 entrees, So I ordered the steak, the filet, and the lobster, right? I think I even ordered like a side of a la carte salmon. You can do a la carte, And then we ordered literally, we go, every dessert on the menu. All of them, just bring them all out. We're just feasting, okay? A few drinks, but, it was, we went home safe and we were good. We were in college, we were good, well-behaved Christian guys. So we had a big feast, right? Big meal, right? I'll tell you what, though. That night, in my life, I could just give you a window into my life at that time. I was searching for significance. I did not understand how desires and Jesus all came together. I believed in Jesus. I was a good Christian guy, but I didn't understand how he interacted with my heart desires, my affections. And I remember laying in bed at night, that night, in the hotel, the penthouse bedroom of this weird casino. And I remember laying there thinking, I in life feel so lonely. And it was a conflict. It was like, I just had the best meal of my life. And I'm sitting here feeling super empty. My stomach is full, but my heart is still so hungry. What is wrong with me? It was a lesson I think God was beginning to teach me, that everything is never enough without Christ. Everything is never enough without Christ. You could have everything tangibly, physically, your heart desires, and it will never be enough. It will never be enough without Christ. He is, as I think it's Handel who wrote the song, or I can't remember who it was, Jesus, joy of man's desiring. That song that plays at like every wedding. Jesus, joy of man's desiring. That's who he is. That is who you are after. Okay, so how do we get it? What do we learn from this passage on how do we receive this meal? This meal, I think, one word is about dependence. Dependence. Humble dependence. Learning to be a person of humility who realizes they are in need, that they hunger, and that the thing that's going to fill you alone, your soul, is Christ. Realizing empty hands is what we need. We don't need full hands. We need empty hands. Hands that are holding loosely to the world, open to receiving from the Lord, from God. You see, the meal is set up by his disciples, And if you notice, there's calculating. There's calculating going on. They're trying to figure this out with their own minds, with their own intellect. And they're saying, okay, Jesus has been teaching very long. These people have heard enough. We just worked our tails off being evangelists for him. We thought we were coming here to get some leisure. All these people came. It says the time it grew late, right? The disciples are like, the time is growing late. I will say, if I was here, if I'm them, I'm with them. I'm like, dude, I'm hungry. This is great teaching. It's time to wrap it up. Okay, we got to get these people out of here. Let's go have a big meal. They're in a desolate place. The time is up. Here we go. They go to Jesus and they're like, okay, it's time to send them off. And how does he respond to them? Why don't we give them something to eat? And they're like, give them something to eat? That would be 200 denarii. Someone did some calculating and figured out that's 8 months' wages. Like that's taking the majority of my salary all year long if we were to actually go pay for these people to eat all this food. This makes no sense. 8 months' salary, Jesus, to give to all these people? And what does Jesus do? He responds, well, how much food do we have? How many loaves and fish do we have here? So, okay, we'll go find out, right? So we got 5 loaves and 2 fish, okay? It's time to send the people home. Jesus is like, no, we're going to feed them. We're going to feed these people. There's a line here in Psalm 23:2 where it says, or Psalm 23:2 is the reference, where Jesus in this passage says, put them down in the green grass. When I saw that line here, I thought, man, we could do a whole sermon just on this one verse. That Jesus is saying, have them sit down in the green grass. Now, these guys who are students of the Word, the Old Testament, if you're a student of the Word, you hear green grass. Hey, lie down in some green grass. Sit down on some green, comfortable grass. What's that a reference to? The Good Shepherd. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He's the shepherd I shall not want. There's this relationship that God wants to have with his people where he's like, trust me, do what I say, lay down in the green grass, be with me, and you will be a person that won't be in what? Want. That line, I shall not want. What is that about? I won't be a person ruled by my desires because I'll be satisfied in God. I'll be content with what he provides. I won't always, a friend was confessing to me this weekend that, he owns a ranch and he's always looking over the fence, thinking, if I had that too, then I'd be satisfied. And he's like, how foolish is that? That's not going to do it. That on a big scale is how we all are with all of our lives. If I just had that, if I just had this, that. A person who's God, when God is your shepherd, when Jesus is your shepherd, you become a person who still struggles with it, but you become less in want. You're less ruled by your desires, but you still have desires, and you're still bringing them to Jesus to help fulfill them. So we see that reference there. A crucial principle I think that we see in this story is this. God only calls you to do what he must do through you. God only calls you to do what he must do through you. Dependence is the way. They look at this situation and they think, we cannot do this. Jesus says, yeah, I want you to be in that place. I want you to be in a place where you say, Jesus, what you want me to do is impossible. And then he says, okay, good, you're in the right place. You can only do what I must do through you. You need my power. You need my life. We all have temptations. We all have unique struggles and things that we face, and we might think, well, that person over there has less struggle than me, or that person over there might have more struggle than me. What Jesus calls all of us to is what? Total surrender, that we give him all of our life and say, I'm going to deny myself in everything. I'm going to take up my cross and follow you. For all of us, that's an impossible task. We can't do that in our own strength. We can't produce the spiritual fruit that he needs, that we need to be the person that he wants us to be. A great place to look to illustrate this is the fruit of the Spirit. The fruit of the Spirit. You see in Galatians 5, Jesus lists out the fruit. It's like, hey, here's the character qualities I want all Christians to live with. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. When you actually look at these and see what's demanded, what's required here, this is beyond us. This is beyond any person. On one hand, it's what we want. Like if you actually look at it, it's like, oh man, yeah, that is the kind of life that's fruitful. That is the kind of life that's healthy. That is the kind of life, when people live in that, man, their relationships are healthy. They thrive, they flourish, they help other people flourish. But then when you look at it and you're honest with yourself, there's a line in there that says, against such things, there is no law. Hey, put on your thinking cap for a second with me. Against such things, there is no law. What Paul is saying is when you look at the fruit of the Spirit, when you look at the life that God is requiring of you, and you look at those deep inner character qualities, there's no law. On one hand, indirectly, there's no law that can produce them. There's no law that can regulate if you're actually doing them or not. Like with murder or lying, it's in the 10 Commandments, okay? With honoring your father and your mother, the Sabbath, the different 10 Commandments. When you look at those, there are laws for those because you can regulate them. You can come up to someone and be like, I can prove whether you've murdered someone or not, okay? You can prove and catch someone in lies. You can catch someone and prove, okay, yes, you have broken the Sabbath. When Paul says, against such things there is no law, about the fruit of the Spirit, what he's saying is, you can fake them. You can't govern joy with a law. I could say, hey, go be joyful. Well, then how am I going to catch you in that? Because you could walk around and fake it. So I'm happy? Yeah, look at me. Because it's in the heart. I could walk around and say, I'm at peace. I'm, self-control. You could probably get caught in that. But most of these fruits, you cannot govern them with the law. Why is Paul saying that? Because what are they? They're not your fruit. You can't produce them. They're the fruit of the Spirit. If you were to take the fruit of the Spirit and write it on your mirror every morning and wake up and say, I'm going to go try to do these today in my own strength, you know what you would learn? You're a failure. Okay? You're not as holy as you thought you were. You're way more unrighteous than you thought you were. The intent here is to look at this and say, that's not something I can produce in my own life. I need the Holy Spirit to do that in me. Father, I am dependent. I am humble. I'm not humble if I say I'm humble, but you know what I'm saying. I need your Spirit to empower me. I need you to empower me today. I can't do this in my own strength. It's not the fruit of Mark, it's the fruit of the Spirit. You see, guys, Jesus in this miracle of the fish and the bread, he's showing them, what I'm going to do through you is not something you can do in your own strength. You need my power working in and through you. Guys, when you get humble dependence, here's two practical effects. On one hand, if you're someone who walks in humble dependence upon the Lord, when things go well and you succeed, you won't get an ego. You won't get an ego. You won't get more prideful. Because your boast will be, oh, things went well. I give all the glory to God. That's not me. God gets the glory. I'm not going to inappropriately give myself glory. Even Harrison Ford this week was like given a Lifetime Achievement Award. What did he say? I give all the credit to George Lucas. It's like I would be nothing without him. He found me. That's a Christian. He's not, but a Christian that's what we say. I give all the glory to Jesus. He chose me. He found me. He does it. On the flip side, when you fail, when you're criticized, when things don't go well, guess what? You won't be, as the proverb said, a person who's prideful with a stiff neck, whose neck is broken upon criticism, upon failure. Because a humble, dependent person on the Lord, when they're criticized, when they fail, when they have shortcomings revealed to others, when their sin is seen by others, what do they say? Oh yeah, duh, I knew that. Like, I'm a sinner. Like, I'm here because of Jesus. I'm not here because of me. Like, my successes are his. I'm a dependent, humble, I'm in dependence upon him. Dependence, humility is the way. Practically, how do we do this? Abide, the word abide. In John 15, it says, Jesus is the vine. We are the branch. Whoever abides in him, abides, takes their life and fuses it into Jesus' life and is dependent upon it for life, for nutrients, for joy, for peace, for all those things. He's who you look to. They will bear much fruit, but apart from me, you can do nothing. He's like, you are like a branch in a vine. Apart from Christ, you can do nothing. You can do no good apart from him. But connected to him in an intimate, dependent relationship with him, that is where the fruit is born. You will bear much fruit. An example of this I was thinking of this week is this guy, George Mueller. George Mueller lived in Bristol, England in the early 1800s. George Mueller, if you've ever been with like nonprofit money-raising people, this is their worst nightmare. Don't bring up George Mueller with them because he breaks all the rules on raising money. Raising money, he breaks all the rules. He had these rules where he said, I'm never going to ask for any money, which is the worst rule, okay? The second one is, I'm never going to let anybody know my need for my ministry. That's another horrible idea, okay? Other people need to know the need. And then he's like, I'm just going to pray, right? Total miracle, don't follow his example. But he, over the course of his ministry, provided a space for 10,000 orphans. He built 5 orphanages in Bristol, England. They would accommodate 2,000 orphans at a time. He provided food, education. And he stuck with this crazy, strict policy, never any debt, never ask for money, and never let anybody know our need. He just was like, I feel called to just pray. And so he would pray. And he has all these crazy stories of checks showing up, money showing up, milkman showing up with a whole bunch of milk to feed the kids. There were times they get really close to having nothing, and then someone would provide. I mean, it was just wild. The guy was just this living, breathing branch, abiding in the vine, right? He had a quote that he said, his strategy every day, his main work was this: I saw more clearly than ever that the first, great, and primary business to which I ought to attend every day was to have my soul happy in the Lord. I hear that, to have my soul happy in the Lord. I saw that the most important thing I had to do was to give myself to the reading of the Word of God and to the meditation of Scripture, that thus my heart might be comforted, encouraged, warmed, reproved, and instructed. I mean, I'm not recommending you follow his path. I think it was a unique thing at a unique time and place. But I do think we should ask the question, man, like, what could I do? Like, how would my life be different if I woke up every day thinking, my main goal today is to be happy in the Lord, to be happy in the Word of God, to come to the Word of God and to receive that as my primary source of joy, to be serious about being in the Word daily, that God is my daily bread, that Jesus is my daily bread. To be serious about prayer every day, daily bread. To be serious about gathering with the church and fellowship. Just the simple, basic things that are so powerful. How would your life look differently? What would happen to your life? I think that you would be surprised. Guys, I'll close with this. There's an old prayer book, and the title of it is Too Busy Not to Pray. Too busy not to pray. Guys, we can look to our work as our God. We can look to busyness as that thing to fill our souls. And what is that going to do to us? We're just going to get more and more anxious, more and more depressed if we look to work to be the thing that satisfies our soul. Busyness, busy, busy, busy. You are too busy not to pray. You are too busy not to cut out time with the Lord. I saw an interview with Ben Sasse, a former senator, president of the University of Florida. He's dying of pancreatic cancer. He will probably die within the year. He had a relationship with Tim Keller before he died of pancreatic cancer. And he said Tim Keller told him, I never want to go back to the prayer life I had before I had cancer. I never want to go back to the prayer life I had before I knew I was going to die.
And Ben South said the same thing. And I'll tell you the same, I don't have cancer, but I'll tell you the same thing right now. There are seasons in my life that I look back on before intense suffering, before God would strip me of the things that I held on to. And I don't ever want to go back to that. I don't ever want to go back to life before that suffering. Because I look back at myself and I see, oh man, self-sufficiency that was killing me. I see lack of pressing hard after the Lord for joy, knowing He's the only one who's going to provide it. I don't want to go back to that. You don't either. Let's press into the Lord. Guys, I'm really closing now, I promise. When Jesus does this miracle, He does this thing where He says in verse 41, He takes, He blesses, He breaks, He gives. Takes, blesses, breaks, gives. Takes, blesses, breaks, gives. There's 3 places in the gospel where this happens. Here, at the Passover meal, the language takes, blesses, breaks, gives. Then the road to Emmaus, when He is revealing Himself post-resurrection, some disciples didn't believe, they didn't even notice it was Him. And He gets them to sit down to eat, and He takes, blesses, breaks, and gives. And then all of a sudden it says their eyes are open. What? This is Jesus. There's 3 places that rhythm is mentioned explicitly. There's one where it happens to someone. It happens to Jesus. He's taken to the cross. When He's on the cross, suffering, the worst suffering ever, He blesses those that are punishing Him, those that are hurting Him. He says, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. He takes, He blesses, and then He's broken for you, for me. His body was broken, His blood was shed for you and for me. And then He gives. He gives up His life. He takes His last breath. He descends into death. But then, 3 days later, He resurrects from the dead and He beats death. He beats it. He conquers it. Guys, this is so important for the hunger of our soul because every day we wake up, we're trying to justify ourselves. We're trying to prove we're worth something. We're trying to prove we're significant. And Jesus provides a meal of His body and His blood to say, it's finished. You're loved.